Electricity prices could be going up for Salt River Project customers under a new pricing process. The average customer could see an increase of about $5.50 a month. And to learn more about the new policy, we welcome Jim Pratt. He's General Manager and CEO of Salt River Project. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining me.
Good to see you. Thank you, Ted.
So it's a new public pricing policy with an average increase, as we mentioned, 5.5, I think 3.5 to $5 a month. So what's going on here? What's this all about?
So what it's really about, Ted, is an area every so often, periodically, right, is the cost that we use to invest in the system, improve the grid, operate and maintain the system. When those costs increase enough that the revenues are no longer covering it, then we'll go through a pricing process. And we've already received a lot of comments from customers that along the lines of, well, SRP already makes enough profit and stuff. And I think it's important for people to understand we're a not-for-profit entity, so we're not invested in trying to make money or anything like that. Anytime revenues exceed costs, we just put that money right back into the business. And so we're really about trying to maintain costs and keep them as low as we can.
So as far as base revenue going back into the system, what are you looking at here?
Well, in this case, if we're successful with this process, it's a public process, of course, that eventually our board has to approve. The total increase in this case would add up to about $169 million on an annual basis. That money would go into taking care of the system that we have today. One of the things we've learned over the years from working with our residential customers specifically is that the number one thing that they put at the top of the list is affordability, but literally right behind that is reliability. So especially when you think about where we live, right, reliability is pretty important. So we work very hard to maintain that reliability, at the same time still managing costs.
So when you talk about upgrading power systems, what's involved there?
It's all kinds of things. Examples would be things like, most people don't realize we replace over 200 miles of underground conductor every year. We have a program where we proactively replace poles, where you try to inspect them and catch them before things fail, whether that's distribution, transmission. You do the same things with power plants, just like many of your listeners would recognize in whatever they do for a job today. You operate and maintain equipment, things, and you do all those things to maintain that reliability.
I noticed about $68 million is anticipated in fuel and purchase power revenues. Actually, $68 million less in fuel and purchase power revenues is anticipated. What exactly does that mean?
So maybe one of the best ways to think about that is you run a utility, you have a lot of costs that would be fixed. Like let's say you have a car. You have a car payment, insurance, things like that are fixed. Then you have other things that are variable, like you buy gasoline as an example. So in our case, the cost of fuel and purchase power are costs that can rise or fall, and we try to make those adjustments actually very quickly. So in this case, there's a base price that goes up, but at the same time, there's also a decrease in the fuel and purchase power part. So across the board, across all customers, it's a net 2.4% increase.
Interesting. Okay, sustainability, decarbonization goals, these sorts of things, are they involved here?
Certainly. So, we're all moving towards a different grid across the entire country, right? So as you start to remove traditional types of generation resources, mainly fossil-based resources, and you start to integrate renewables, and you try to do that on a reasonable time frame, still maintaining that affordability part of it, but you're still transitioning to other types of resources, right? There's a cost that goes along with that component.
What are the goals and what are the costs?
Well,
in general,
in general, I would tell you that the goals are, we work very hard to try to balance three things: affordability, reliability, and sustainability, right? And we work very hard to try to do those. So different customers would have different views of which ones of those are the most important. We end up having to try to balance those. And then in terms of costs, it's really that total cost that we're talking about that drives, as you add all those costs up, we try to make sure that we just collect enough revenue to cover those costs.
Those costs, I would imagine, would include much in the way of labor costs.
Sure.
How does that factor in?
Exactly, to your point. And when you think about all the things that have happened, certainly since the pandemic, all the things that occurred, besides the investments that I talked about, lots of supply chain issues, the cost of materials has gone up, cost of labor has gone up. We've all seen inflation, increasing interest rates. Those things all impact the cost that it takes for us to serve customers.
And speaking of serving customers, there's a customer service enhancements is also mentioned as a reason for this needed increase. What does that mean?
In that case, what that one's really about is you have very large systems. For anybody that's got thousands of customers like we do, you have customer information systems that house all your information, do all your billing and things like that. We've reached the point where ours is basically obsolete, and we're in the process of changing it out.
So we're talking about a variety of operational plans here, are we not?
Absolutely. Large variety of
Yeah.
operational plans.
And you're accepting public comment. A couple of locations I noticed. Talk to us about that.
So this week, tomorrow, we actually have one out at the Glendale Community College in the Student Union building there. Thursday, it's at the ASU Polytechnic campus and the Student Union building there.
And the final vote is set for late February?
That's what we anticipate at this point.
I want to talk real quickly before you go here. Limited income economy price plans and these sorts of things, tiered monthly service charges and those sorts of things. How much are they used? How much do they make a difference? How much are they affecting this particular request to get more money in, to get more revenue?
Ted, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up because there's a couple points I think that are important to make. I mean this. When we do this, I understand that every dollar we spend, that's a dollar out of our customer's pocket. And especially when you're in that limited income category, as you mentioned, those are customers that we have that every day are struggling to decide shelter, food, clothing, healthcare, things like that. And we do understand that. So in this case, actually, there's about 300,000 out of a little over 1 million residential customers we have that will see basically no price increase, maybe even a very, very slight decrease because of the way that we've implemented this. In that case, those customers that it costs less to serve, like people in an apartment, a condominium, things like that, we're trying to make sure that we spread those costs in an equitable manner so that if you're a much larger customer, it costs more to serve a single large house than it does multiple apartments, as an example. So that's why you'll have a significant number of our customers that will come out of this in very good shape. In addition to that, though, we still understand that there's a lot of customers in that limited income category that struggle. So we have a program we call our Economy Price Plan. And what that really means is that if you hit certain income thresholds, which are really based off the federal poverty level, we're going to be increasing eligibility for that to 200% of the federal poverty level. So that means there's about another 100,000 customers that will be eligible. And what that means is what we're proposing is that they would get a $25 credit on their bill every month. So for most of the people, the average customer in that bucket, that's about a 20 to 25% break.
And real quickly before you go, is that clear to those customers? Because sometimes we hear about these kinds of programs and I'm befuddled and I'm not even part of the program. I mean, the communication aspect of all that, is that there?
Yes, and we think it's pretty clear, but what I would certainly encourage anybody who's listening is call us, ask us. We can talk to you about it on the phone. We can sign you up for that program over the phone and get you going.
And needs to be approved by the board of directors as price policy just in the first place before we get any further with that.
Absolutely. This is a proposal from management to the board, but the board has to approve it.
Yeah. Jim Pratt, SRP CEO, good conversation. Good to have you here.
You too. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.